So the idea to this workshop actually came 2 years ago when at the 70th birthday of Heiji Feng. Yeah? I met Jonathan and we mentioned, well, PROCOS is now 25 years ago. And then the idea came about whether we should not have any gathering. Yeah? And first, together with Mike Hinchy, we tried it in Dachstuhl, but it didn't work out because at that moment they said we are looking too much backward, not forward enough.
Right.
The proposal was written in a hurry, and later Jonathan came up with this wonderful idea to have it here. Yeah? And that is where we are now. Yeah? So I'm very happy that this could be arranged together with Mike Hinchy. Now I'm sharing the session, and the first speaker is Ines Björner, together with Tony Hoare and Hans Langmark. They came about to arrange this project, and Ines will tell us some very early memories and documents how this PROCOS project came about. Yeah? So please.
Thank you very much. So actually, I'm giving part of Tony Hoare's talk without his permission. Without his permission, all this technology, I wish. Oh, that works. So to me, it all started at a IFIT Working Group 2.3 meeting in the week of Friday the 13th of November 1987 at this modest lodge here. And I had given a talk. One should be careful about giving talks when it's connected. This is sold in the room. So I'd given a talk on how we in Denmark had developed an ADA compiler using VDM. I can hardly. So I'll check this out. Yes. So contrary to my normal way of giving talks, that was only one slide.
Yeah.
And it showed a diagram. Already then, Edgar started railing. The mistake was perhaps that there were different colors on the diagram. Arrows and boxes, all labeled, all denoting proper mathematical theories, algebra and cofunctors and functors and so on. But he didn't like it, and he was in his right to do so. It was only a very short presentation. And after the talk, there was a coffee break, and Tony Hoare took me aside and asked permission to write in this notebook. Carefully written. And he did so in his wonderful handwriting. And this is what he wrote. Now you can't see that. But therefore I have.
You have it in your folders.
And it is in the folders. In mine, it was actually 2 times. I don't know why. They must have thought it was such a bad talk by having 2 copies of it might be true. But anyway, you can read this yourself. But the idea is that semantics and so on. And that was the idea, to find a machine designed in VLSI and a compiler from OCC to traces of the behavior of that machine, such that the compiler compiles correctly. And there's more to it than just that. So there is a notion of accountability, and you can all read that yourself. And at the end, Tony Hoare, asked, enigmatically almost, do you think that we could get an SP basic research action out of this? And we did, and that was to me at the beginning of PROCOS. The talk is almost half over. So that you can enjoy the following talks. So that was, to me, in the beginning, when we started, and you can imagine how we proceeded and so on, gathered the people who are here and others. And one of the main contributions, as far as I'm concerned, to the PROCOS project was made by Chao Chen. And I had invited him. He had been for some winters for 3 months visiting me, and every other winter in the 1980s. Oh yes, I was first introduced to the name of Chao Chen by Tony Ho. And we knew I was going to China and suggested that I meet Tony. And oh yeah, I would do that. Only I was then received at the Institute of Computing, which was the predecessor one of the Software Institute, by Professor Xu Gongxi, who was the head of that. And as we were sitting there, Chinese style, along beautiful sofas along the walls, with cups of teas, mugs of tea being replenished ever so often, I was asking, could I also meet Chao Chen? And Xu Gongxi, who was sitting to my left, said, yeah, he's sitting right there to your right. Yeah. So that was the first time I met Chao Chen. And so on the spot, I invited him, and he came 3 times or so in the following year. This was 81. In the following years, to Copenhagen for 3 months. And in 83, 82, 4, and 6, I think it was, or something like that. So I had also invited him in perhaps anticipating PROCOS, the PROCOS project, which we had applied for and was in principle granted. I had invited him to come here, and Tony agreed that he could spend some months with me and some months of the half-year stay from July 1st to 89, ominous year, with us. And on June the 4th, something very tragic happened, and I got very busy. So that's the anecdote you can read about. Well, not anecdote, but the story in the handout. So it says, maybe I should tell it, maybe I shouldn't. And I'll tell it now. So I spent about 24 hours drafting a 2/3 of a page fax to be sent to appropriate people in the days after June 4th, saying that the PROCOS project had now been approved. It had not. And it was all about designing logics and so on, so that one could develop real-time embedded software systems. Probably correct. And the real-time embedded was put in there so as to make the readers in a happy mood. And I just wanted to write that fax, I said, to ensure that Joe and his family would arrive on July the 1st. And less than 24 hours later, I had 3 responses. They are lost now, but one from the, in a sense, at the call of Minister Deng Hengao. He was minister, one of the 3 ministers running the People's Liberation Army, and he was responsible for for technology and science, for industry, for the army. He had also bought our Ada compiler, and this was 5 years after he had bought it. And from the ones I had addressed the facts to, always was, oh yeah, don't worry, he will come. So I knew now that I had one of the top people in the Politburo behind me. And he arrived with the family on July the 1st. Now, in those days, China was politically in a little bit of trouble. So official contacts between our countries, probably your country or wherever you come from, were not encouraged. But mine was not an official contact, so I had informed the Chinese ambassador, who spoke perfect Danish, learned some espionage course 20 years earlier. And he came in his car and picked me up, and we all went to the airport, to the diplomatic entrance, and drove out to the airplane that had just landed. And there was a whole suite of cars following us from the embassy. And we received the Choctaw family and drove them to a house I had rented for them. And in the afternoon, Sunday morning, we had a big garden party. And there were about 20 Chinese from the embassy and many others from the Danish Mathematics Center who had made the Ada compiler, and myself in our garden. And the next day, I took Joe to the office, installed him in a nice office right next to mine. And when he was sort of sorting out his papers, I was in my office. The doors were always open. And Joe came in to me with his glasses in his hand and closed the door. Came over and sat down and said, I'm not going back soon. So we knew why. He gave further reasons why he didn't have to. I reached backward to the preset telephone and pushed button 1. And Tony was sitting in his office somewhere in Oxford. You can always spot when he's in the office from the street. He's sitting there with a back to you. And he lifted the receiver, and the speaker was on, so Joe could hear that. Tony here, or whatever he addressed himself, announced goodbye. And I said to Tony, I've got good news for you. We are going to have George Chen with us for the next 3 years. And Joe was sitting there looking at me a little bit bewildered. And he will stay 4 months a year with you and 8 months a year with me. The family will live in Oxford. I said, you've got it all wrong, Dinas. 8 months with me, 4 months with you. So knew who was his real benefactor, so he said, it is going to be as Dinas said. So that was the beginning. The next beginning. So I've told the story. There's another one, which I call, with this terrible Americanism, defining moment. I hate it. It was the Bornholm meeting, I can't remember when it was. But a dear colleague of us, Erling Maud Sørensen, who was a professor in electrical circuit theory. The department had been closed down and some of the staff moved into the computer science department. A great advantage for us. Erling was there and he gave a talk on the, you could say, the behavioral aspects of these circuits under transitions. And that was that talk, and afterwards there was a coffee break, and during that I saw Anders and Tony and Joe Chen at a whiteboard or one of these things discussing it. That to me was when duration calculus was first identified as such. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's a long talk. I kept the time, and any questions you might have will be answered by Tony Hall. During that meeting, the previous note that was from the talk by Tony Hall on co-products and so on, and the succeeding notes are based on EWD, future directions in CS. Can you imagine that talk about future directions in CS? But anyway, there's also a drawing here, and I'm very happy to say that that logo there, luckily, did not become the logo of the PROCOS project. Jonathan made that one.
Okay. So are there some questions? Which may be answered either by Ines or Antonio.
I suggest we go on. We can obviously ask any of us questions throughout the workshop.
Very much. The next speaker is Jonathan Bone, and he was always very instrumental for us keeping the documents right. I think you designed LaTeX style and pushed us to submit in time when deliverables were there. So, and now you will talk about your memories.
Thank you very much, Rudiger. Yes, this is going to be mostly a reminiscence talk. I was told by Steve Bourne, who was the Bourne Show of Unix, whenever you don't know what you're talking about, just add whence and whither to the end of it. So this is one of those talks where most of it is going to be whence, about the PROCOS project, to give, well, down memory lane for a lot of us, and also hopefully to tell some of you who weren't on the PROCOS project what happened on it, and a little bit of whither what's happened since then. And broadly speaking, today it's mostly whence people, people on the PROCOS project. Tomorrow we have more people who weren't on the project, but maybe we've been influenced by it. So yes, I've done a little subtitle based on Venus's talk. So this is how it all continued, as seen from Oxford, which is where I was based at the time. So I'll try and link in a little bit with what Venus said. I don't disagree with anything he said, apart from the 8 months and 4 months, but we can discuss that. So this is an Oxonian view. Being Oxford, we have a classicist who's going to speak next. So, you should always look back on things. This is the life of a project rather than that individual people. So I think PROCOS is worth looking back on. So my own background is rather eclectic. So I did maths and arts at school, engineering at university, electronics in industry to start with, then moved into programming. So I literally only had a 1-week course in Fortran programming as my entire training, formal training, before I started actually doing the research in computing. As you can see, I worked in quite a lot of real industry, including Silicon Valley, but also at Imperial College before I went to Oxford. So in Oxford, just for those of you who don't know where Oxford is, I had to write a little report there for Esprit projects called The Alien's Guide to Oxford. So this was actually a technical report to explain for people who are visiting Oxford where to go. So this is the Oxford view of Europe. This is Europe up here. This is Cambridge somewhere out in the plains, slightly down. This is Oxford, not too bad. Everyone had to come from Heathrow to Oxford. Of course, in fact, this time you're here, so now you know where you are. Most of you may have come from here to here. So, anyway, I'm glad to see we're all here. This is where my wife comes from, to north. She's coming along later. So this is my first, I suppose, time that I met some people who might be involved with PROCOS. So this is actually 1986. So this was a programming research group in Oxford. There aren't many photos. This is about the only group photograph I know of in Oxford of the programming research group. So I've still got the original copy. You probably can't see everyone there. I've picked out a few slightly more important people. Those of you who know Tony, I hope you've still got the Panama hat. With Tony often wore a Panama hat at the time. There he is in the middle. Jim, you've also husband.
Sure.
Yes, Jim always had a great. You seem to have toned them down slightly. So,
More impressed by the hair, actually.
Yes. So looking slightly younger, but almost the same. I mean, Bill Roscoe was not on the PROCOS project, but very much worked with Tony on CSP and so on, and then became head of the now Department of Computer Science. This is Jifeng, who sadly can't be here. He was going to be here speaking later today. He's got a bad cough. He's had some health things and he's been advised not to travel, sadly. But his talk is going to be presented by Zhu Wire, who was my student later on. So he's here to represent Jifeng. And Jeff as well. This is me and Paige, who was sort of indirectly on the project doing hardware things. This is the youngest member here. This is Alice, but sadly she didn't go on. Well, she does do computing things now. She did a chemistry doctorate and actually does quite a lot of processing with computing and so on. So there's just a few people picked out from there, who some of whom were involved with PROCOS. So this is slightly later from Dinas. This is my first meeting for PROCOS. So Dinas might remember this one. I think this is the right set of characters, or main characters involved. This was at St John's College in Oxford, and I've managed to dig out my old diary. I'm still fairly old school with diaries, so I still have my Oxford University diary going back 25 years. So it's all in the little rows, which is quite useful for trying to remember what we did. I suspect these smartphones will all get lost in the clouds somewhere nowadays. So I trust paper, no battery, etc. So looking at this, well, first of all, Tony came and told me, keep the weekend free. So this is telling me to Tony, don't do anything this weekend, something is going to happen. I didn't know what it was then. So the next thing, there was an announcement, there's an S3 PROCOS. This is the first time I think I ever read the word PROCOS meeting with Dinas Bjorn here, Denmark. I had no idea who he was. So you're going to meet somebody called Dinas Bjorn. Okay, fine. And that, as you said, it says 7 o'clock St John's. So literally in the lodge here at 7 p.m. on the Friday night, I turned up, and there were these 4 larger-than-life characters, all of whom I'm very glad to say are here today. I think I've got that right. And we had a meeting the next day. We had a very nice dinner in St John's College on the Friday evening. The whole day meeting, basically discussing the PROCOS project, getting things sorted out. And then we had another very nice dinner with Tony and Jill, who sadly isn't here today, Tony's wife. In North Oxford there. So I managed to dig that out. It's 25th, 26th of March. So my wife tells me her birthday was the day before. I was busy doing all this, not attending to her birthday. So then, of course, we had to write a lot of stuff. So we mentioned documentation. So I guess we obviously had to have a logo being a European project. I think, well, I'm sure Dinas came up with the term PROCOS. So this already existed. And we had to write an annex all about what we're going to do. And these were the partners at the time. So again, we have most of these people. We've got the ones with red ticks are here. Sadly, Fleming Nielsen isn't here. Doug Edwards of Manchester. I guess I always remember him reading the paper at every meeting. Just as but I guess these are the main people who were involved. And as you can see, we're in various different places in Denmark, UK, Germany especially. And Ursula Martin, managed to, there she is, she found the original letter, so thank you, Ursula, for doing that. So this is the letter, as usual, sent from one administrator two, do you remember Mr. Jensen? Another administrator, I'm assuming, Denis, is that right? Do you remember Mr. Jensen? No, no, but he must have been an administrator. Anyway, you notice down at the bottom, they did actually at least CC Denis to say, yes, you have the money. But of course, it's much more important the administrators tell each other that you have the money. So, yes, I have a very messy office, something like this. My wife is constantly complaining. But actually, that means I've still got a few odd things to do with PROCOS. So I've put some of them outside, which you're welcome to go and have a look at, including these large orange folders with deliverables and so on. And I've picked out a few of those for this talk. So Denis read one of the first very important ones, which was basically an overview of the PROCOS idea, which appeared as a conference paper in text and so on. He very kindly added a lot of names to it. He did all the work. He wrote it, but then everybody got their name on it. So that was one of my first publications. And we had a lot of these diagrams. So actually PROCOS was influenced by Clink, and I'm very happy to say we've got Jay Strobel-Moore here, who's involved with the Clink project, doing a verified stack, trying to verify a system all the way through from high level down to low level. So we used that model to try and do that in the European projects, looking at requirements, going down to specification, to a programming language, compiled down to code, Occam code ultimately. I guess in the sort of transputer Occam tradition, coming from where we were. So we had a lot of these sort of diagrams of relating different levels and so on. We also had the now legendary gas burner example, so that should bring back a few memories. This is one of the pictures of the gas burner, spark plugs and things. I think this was one of the, I think this is probably the earliest document we had on the project from Anders Rahn, and we've got two of the people here, and also Evie Sorensen that Denis mentioned. So this was actually describing that gas burner. We then all said, oh yes, this is a good case study, and we'll all use this for the project. So I think this, I mean, I always thought of the gas burner as being the reason why duration calculus happened, that we had all these things like the gas mustn't leak more than a second every minute or whatever. So we needed to be able to say that in a line in mathematics. So we can transcribe these very simple requirements in English into mathematics, and it would be a line in English and a line in maths. Duration calculus was very good for that, and it proved to be very good for lots of other things too. So I think this is actually one of the most very important papers that came out of the project, and I think that's one of the things about research. We had no idea duration calculus was going to be invented on the project when we started. We had all sorts of ideas which we worked on as well with compilers and so on. But actually this is probably one of the most influential things to come out of the project. Is if you look on Google Scholar, it's got nearly 1,000 citations. I always think 1,000 is a good number. That means it's had some influence. If you get up to 1,000, you've got a little community going using that. So Joe Chow Chen and Tony Coram and Anders Rahn, I think Joe was certainly the leader of this little gang of three. Sadly, Joe isn't here either. He's in China now. He thought about coming, but again, health and so on makes it more difficult. So we had many reports by Denis, always lots of diagrams. So of course we had lots of different programming languages. We started off with our PL0, very simple cut down Occam, and gradually increased it in size with parallelism and recursion and so on, adding various superscripts, subscripts, etc. With a whole sort of hierarchy here. I mean, I guess mostly we went up this route. We had a sort of PL0 with recursion was the one we mainly worked on. Again, well, these are, I don't know if they're now called Denis diagrams, but Denis produced all these nice diagrams of what's going on with our stack here with the specification, programming language, machine language, and all interlinked formally. Yes, more. I'm going to go through all of these. As usual, I've got tons of, how am I doing time-wise? I've got tons of these. Some of these I'm just going to let them pass by. This is Hans Langmark, who's also here working on doing compiler development, again, different levels. And of course, we're using T-diagrams to try and generate the compiler. We have all three of these people here today, so that's nice to see you all here. All of them will be giving talks, some longer than others. So I guess this was my first thing I was involved or publication with PROCOS. So Tony came up with this wonderful idea of compiling specification, very simple and elegant as always with Tony. There are a few hangers-on like me and Paratosh helping. Jifeng, of course, was checking it all really worked. That's why Tony and Jifeng were just a wonderful team. Tony can come up with a very elegant idea. Jifeng would explain why it doesn't work. And then go around. If it went around 5 times, then they basically gave up. I think there was a termination to it. But Tony would normally come back and say, if you do this, it'll work. If it only took 3 times around the loop, then that was good. Yes, we had various nice meetings around Europe, as one does. Yes, this is embarrassingly shorts for the time. I don't think I've got those anymore. But we had a nice, this is one of the other papers that we wrote, again, on the programming language and so on. So this is Anders Rahn here. So we're here anyway, there's two of us here. Jens Solberg disappeared into American industry and so on. So to look at the projects themselves, I mean, when we started PROCOS, we thought this will be a project, but then it developed. We thought we'll have another project, this is nice. So we had PROCOS 2. Then we thought, well, this is nice, we can expand it. We can have a working group with lots of people involved. So these were the 3 big initiatives that we had, as you can see, over about 8 years or so when they were running. So again, we used this gas burner, continued on the PROCOS 2. We had a smaller number of partners, slightly more focused, because Ernst Rüdiger moved to Oldenburg at that time. So this type of focus, I guess we found out, you know, the core of partners and so on. I think somebody mentioned Lübeck earlier, so I found this nice picture of Lübeck, which it's a very nice, if you haven't been to Lübeck, it's a wonderful place to visit. And this was the event that we all we were involved with.
That's the proceedings.
Yes, that's the proceedings, yes. If we go back, yeah. So I think PROCOS supported the event, essentially. So Jifeng also wrote a book called Prove the Correct Systems, which I suppose was giving his, I was slightly involved with that. So that came out after PROCOS 2. We had reports, but also PROCOS sort of became a family of projects. So as well as these European projects, certainly in the UK, we have these three projects, or 2 projects and a fellowship, all funded with UK funding. So it became not just one project, but a much larger effort. So this was a project I was actually involved on, was very much involved around Occam and transfusion and so on, doing similar things, but also with Cambridge involved with using whole theorem proofs and so on. We had INMOS involved, so that was good for real industrial involvement. So that was going on in parallel, and that was I was actually funded on that project, but very much involved on both projects. And then we went on to do the working group, which is a much bigger but lots of funding for meetings. So we had a much bigger group of 25 partners approximately, and continued with meetings. So there's some nice pictures out there that some of you might recognize yourselves on. I've got a few of them here. This is one we had in Denmark. I mean, sadly, well, Ole Johan Dahl was there, sadly no longer with us. He was always a great figure at the meetings, I remember. Would always come up with some interesting things to say. Also very musical. We have Hans Langmark's wife here, who they often play together and so on. And this was yet another meeting, sadly, that's Casa Sierra, again, sadly, no longer with us. But this, you can see we had a large number of people. All the main people, like Tony, are actually hiding away at the back. But there's Ernst Rüdiger, me, and Anders at the front. But yeah, some of the important people are hiding in the darkness there. So you have to look very closely at the original of this outside. And this was our final meeting. By this time I was at Reading University, between Oxford and London. So again, there's various people here, and there's, as always, Ernst Rüdiger, Tony. These are more, I've picked out people who are here, so hopefully you can see yourselves there. But also, we tried to take over the world as well, so we weren't just European. So we had initiatives in the US, going over to Cornell and so on in the US. China, or almost China, Macau, which was back to China in 1999, soon after this. But we had a lot of meetings there, and Dinas was very much involved with this, setting up UNOIST in Macau. And also Brazil, so we have Augusto here. So we South America, also part of the PROCOS empire. And we have got people from 4 different continents. I guess these 3 continents and Europe representing and speaking at this meeting. So this was one of the PROCOS workshops in Macau. This was the first time I think I went outside US and North America. So I think I'm there at the back. Yes. So I can't remember a lot of these people. So perhaps somebody can remind me who some of them are. And they have a very nice place in Macau, Portuguese style. Zhou Chao Chen was later director after Dinas. So it was a wonderful sort of outpost for formal methods. Sadly, no longer an outpost for formal methods, but it was a wonderful place to go and visit. We also, I guess, we were fairly ahead of the time in terms of having a web presence in the early 90s and so on. Previously, it was all FTP, if you remember typing in funny things. So we got a web server set up very early and had that as our, in a similar but smaller way to Tim Berners-Lee, who was doing it for, what was it, 40,000 physicists. We were doing it for a smaller number of PROCOS people around the world. They can all get information on this site. I guess a legacy is there still is the PROCOS mailing list. It's survived all these years. So if you're not on the PROCOS mailing list, want to know about related events, then you're very welcome to go and join that now on Gmail. So a little bit, that's on the project, a little bit on the wither. So my own personal sort of wither is, I guess I've continued informal methods. I've done things like working on air traffic control with Altran, with Rod Chapman, who's also here, using Z and so on. But I've also worked in various universities, currently at Birmingham City University, also being a visitor at lots of interesting places like UNOIST. And gone, I guess, more into this. I've got interest in the history of computing. I guess that's one reason I quite like it. It's a not very old history, but we are sort of celebrating a little bit of history here today. I've also done a lot more interdisciplinary things with museums and so on, and the arts. This is an event I'm also involved with in the same room here. But I still keep up my interest in informal methods. So, as I said, being more interdisciplinary, I've been writing papers with philosophers, sociologists, and so on. And I guess one sociological approach to communities is this communities of practice. Some of you may know about it, but actually looking back on PROCOS, it was a little community of practice, and this approach lets you look at how our community develops, also how it dies. So there are different stages of communities. All communities die eventually, and it's what happens then. Does it split off and create new communities? So we've created maybe the duration calculus community has come out of PROCOS. For a community to practice, you certainly need a particular domain area. Ours was provably correct systems. You need to create a community of people who will talk to each other. So it was useful having the project and the working group to get people together. You certainly need meetings every so often. I guess our meetings are getting slightly less often now, and the last one was about 16 years ago. In 1999, but we're still going. We're still here having another meeting. And of course, you need some looking at practice. So again, I think duration calculus is a very good example of that. If you have a community practice, you've also got to accept, some people aren't going to be very involved. So here at this meeting, we have a few outsiders who haven't been involved with PROCOS. Hopefully, get slightly interested. They might become slightly more interested and be more peripheral. Then, of course, there's some very active people, and then you need some coordination. We always had Venus as a great coordinator. I did some coordination. You need a little hub of people making things happen, and then obviously a lot of people who are willing to come. And I'd just like to say thank you very much to everyone for coming here, because it's wonderful to have people literally from all over the world willing to come back and speak here. So just going back to that picture, so in communities, one thing about if you're in a academic, part of being in a community is actually having co-authors. So looking at this set of people, these are co-authors, these are co-authors. You see Tony writes most, Tony is very good at writing with other people. So these are also co-authors, etc. We keep going. And even now, I have actually written a paper with my daughter. She's a terrible co-author. She won't do as she's told, etc. But we've written a paper on visualization and chemistry together. That's been an interesting thing to do. And I've written with my wife here on museums and so on, not on formal methods. So, and obviously Tony and Jifeng, it was a wonderful partnership over the years, because I think they were so complementary in terms of ideas, checking, etc., and going around the loop. So with Jifeng, who sadly isn't here, he had his test drift in 2011. So these are some of the people he's written with, and one of them is Brian Zhu, who's here, was my PhD student, so that's another little link. Zeeming, also, who was at UNIST and is now at Birmingham City University, obviously myself and Tony, etc. So if you go on Microsoft Academic Search, they have some very nice visualization tools. Sadly, they don't seem to be keeping it up to date, but on the other hand, for PROCOS, that's fine, it's still historical. So, but you can see who's been writing with who. So here's Jifeng, for instance, with Tony and Zeeming and me, etc. So this is the little PROCOS set of authors here. A few extra ones like Augusto. I couldn't get the loop to go around everybody. So as I mentioned, Jifeng had a very nice celebration 2 years ago. And this is actually where I sort of re-met Zeeming. So I'm talking about communities and how they develop. Zeeming was there, I was there, Jifeng was obviously there. So again, these are a few pictures of Ernst Rudiger was there. They're all, sadly, Tony wasn't there, but it's a long way to travel out of there. But there were quite a lot of PROCOS people who were there, including Zhou Chao Chen there. But that's actually led to Zeeming coming back to the UK. He's now at Birmingham City University. We've set up a Centre for Software Engineering. We now have a very good new PhD student who's helping today, Zhao Hong Chen, who was at Peking University and has come from China to the UK. So you might see him around helping. And, well, as I said, I've got a lot more interdisciplinary and historical, and there aren't many memoirs by computer scientists, and this is one of the few memoirs I know, which is by Mathai Joseph, who wasn't on PROCOS, but was in the same sort of area, real-time systems. It's called Digital Republic. He's from India, so this is partly lamenting the problems they've had in India with development of IT, and also partly his experiences of working as an academic at Cambridge and then Warwick, and some of the administrative traumas you have as an academic and so on. It's on Kindle, very cheap. I certainly very much recommend it to any of you who haven't read it and want to see the life of a computer science academic. And well, certainly had some very nice advice for PhD students, because he went to Cambridge and studied under David Wheeler, inventor of the subroutine and so on. As usual, he hadn't done very much in the first year, like a lot of PhD students. As usual, he was worried, like a lot of PhD students. David Wheeler, yes, we should read the way David Wheeler sort of handles students is a wonderful way of looking after students, letting them get themselves into a mess and then just suggesting what they might do to get out of the mess. I think David Wheeler seemed to be wonderful at doing that, just the right level of mess and then rescuing. And one piece of advice is, what do you actually want to do at the end? Don't decide what you want to do next week. You've got to think, where am I trying to get to? Mathai Joseph was actually the supervisor, seemingly, who's coming tomorrow. Sadly, he's teaching today, so we'll see him tomorrow. And well, I think both he and Zeeming realise you need a year messing about for a PhD, because that's part of doing a PhD. You find out interesting things to do. So this is, I like connections, and this is a little bit of interesting academic ancestry. I've done this partly for Chow Hong here. Has he disappeared? Anyway, this is some academic ancestry to show how soon you can get back to interesting people when you try doing ancestors. So he's being supervised by Zeeming, who was supervised by Mathai, who was supervised by David Wheeler at Cambridge. So when you get to this level, everybody was a fellow of the Royal Society after this. So David Wheeler was supervised by Maurice Wilkes at Cambridge. Now this is when you get about as far back as computer science sort of existing. So before that, there's no computer scientists to supervise these. So Maurice Wilkes really came out of physics. So these are all people who were doing physics, mainly at Cambridge. So eventually you get back to J.J. Thomson and Ernest Rutherford, discovering the electron and so on. So it's amazing how quickly you sort of connect people together when you look at these sort of connections. I've been looking at a little bit at Galois recently, because certainly at the time of PROCOS, Galois connections was a big thing. And as I said, I've been doing more interdisciplinary things, so I've actually been writing a paper with an archivist. And she's looking at all the archives on Galois in Paris. You can speak French, unlike me, and read all this old script. So we're having a go at doing a paper together on that, on Galois. Of course, Tony, there's a lot of Galois connections. This is from Tony's book, transcribed. So Tony and Jifeng do the unified theories of programming. But I think Tony's talk is sort of his latest views on that, although he often talks about the young Tony and the old Tony. So see where we are with that. But again, I mentioned that I do electronic visualization in the arts here. So there are a lot of Galois visualizations as well, which is mathematics that I've been looking at. Also more historical, we hopefully all know Alan Turing after his centenary in 2012. So I've certainly got very interested in him. It was very nice to see when I went to do a summer school with Carol Morgan, who was at Oxford, and Zeeming, in the middle of China, and Chongqing, which, well, if you're like me, you hadn't heard of Chongqing beforehand. It's only 10 million people or something. It's just a little place, so bigger than London essentially. but it was very nice to see outside their computer science department. You know, there was a bust of Alan Turing, rather. I think only Alan Turing and Einstein, non-Chinese, made it. Well, I think there are a lot of politicians probably and so on. There's certainly now there's less featuring. So they are the two scientists that are featured on this university. I'm currently working on an edited book based on some of those presentations, quite interdisciplinary, so it's quite interesting getting computer scientists, philosophers, mathematicians, all who have slightly different ways of doing things. We're hopefully looks like we're going to have 42 chapters, which, if you know, got Douglas Adams, it's the answer to life, the universal machine and everything. So I've been trying to make it 42, and we seem to be there. So this should be coming out in at the end of this year, we hope. And there's a nice, you probably haven't seen this image. This is a painting of Turing that's been done recently that we're hoping to have on the front cover, which we can negotiate with the artist and so on. So just ending with a couple of quotes. So I always like this Einstein quote, because I think, well, to take PROCOS, we did, okay, we thought we knew what we were doing for some things, but then the interesting bit, I would say, was the duration calculus. Perhaps we didn't know what we were going to do that, and that's what came out of PROCOS. This is something that was written at the time of PROCOS. I remember seeing this document floating around, and we've always had problems with administration over the ages. I'd say it's perhaps getting worse, but even in those days, there were jokes going around about the difficulty of administration. Certainly, Turing had difficulties with administration. His ace computer, didn't get going properly because of administrative problems, and similarly even at Bletchley Park. So, little summary. Well, one thing I'm just going to say now is we are going to aim to have a proceedings for this. So one thing I'll say to people who are speaking here, and you can come and tell me, it'll probably be in Springer, but it might be in LNCS, or it might be Springer UK. LNCS, you obviously just send your papers in, camera ready. The UK one, they will do a bit more editing and make it look nice. So I guess that's the choice we have. Do we want to have the usual LNCS style, or would we like them? I think they're actually quite keen at Springer UK to do it. We have good contacts with both. So if anyone has a view, then do come and tell me. But it's likely to be one of these anyway. And Jim sort of suggested, why aren't we doing another PROCOS? Well, we have Age 2020 now. So if anyone wants to talk about any possibilities of doing a European project, that's something, again, I'm hoping people can chat about it, because that seems like a good thing to do. I'll just throw that out there. Jim suggested this. So I'll just say thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of the meeting. I'm going to. You've had a very light-hearted talk from me. Now we're going to have, well, light-hearted but also more serious stuff from Tony, who's going to tell us some of the how it should really be done. So I'll say thank you. I'm happy to answer questions anytime during the meeting. Just come and see me. And do go and look at some of the memorabilia outside that I managed to dig up. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Jonathan. To remind us of so many things during the PROCOS project. No? So now Tony Hall will talk. We thank him very much for getting the idea of the PROCOS project. As far as I understand, it was due to a sabbatical in Austin, Texas, where you learned about link stack and then translated it to European research. Now he will talk of algebraic proof of something different. I'll leave it to him to explain what he was about.
This one fix it up here. Thank you very much. Right up there. Well, it's wonderful hearing the something about the history of our project. I was very interested in both the previous talks, particularly the slide of the very first talk by Dinas. What do those first two slides actually mean? I was going to ask him, but then I felt ashamed, and I hope somebody else would ask him. So I can find out. Thank you very much. Well, it's a great pleasure to welcome here Warren Hunt and Jay Moore. It was indeed a sabbatical visit to the University of Texas at Austin that led to the PROCOS project. Because I had a chance there to meet Jay and Bob Boyer and their colleagues at the computational, CLINC, and hear about the project, which was for a proof of hardware, operating system, assembly language compiler, high-level language compiler, and I think also a verification condition generator. I was very impressed by that project, as incorporating ideas of program verification, but I asked Jay a question about how is he sure that the various components of his project actually fitted together correctly, so that was there any form of guarantee that the language which was compiled by the high-level language compiler and the assembler was in fact the same one whose verification was undertaken by the proof system for that language. And I think Dinas's slide did in fact propose an approach to solution to that problem of getting the hardware and high-level language to join safely together. Because of course, when you have a large system, where do you find all the errors? So where do all the errors occur? Very often remain unfound. Well, the serious errors occur at the interfaces between the components of the system, which, like the gaps between the floorboards, are the place where bugs flourish and propagate. So that question still remains open, since I don't understand the answers I gave to this many years ago, and that will be the subject of my talk today.
Tony, will you take questions?
Please, yes.
Well, what you just said doesn't make any sense to me with regard to the clean stack. Because at every level, the language was formal, all formalization was done within a single system.
Yes.
And the compilation of one was verified with respect to the very same semantics that was used in the proof of correctness of the previous level of the stack. And so you could find bugs at the bottom because our formalization of the hardware might have failed to correspond to the actual physical device. But short of that or a bug in the theorem prover that would make it prove something unsound, there aren't any bugs.
Right, this goes out of face. Thank you very much. I think you're quite correct. I can't guarantee that my recollection is accurate, or indeed my understanding of the situation. Thank you. Anyway, today I hope to present an outline of a solution which I am now very keen on, and maybe it supersedes the explanation that I gave to Dinas, and maybe transcends in some way the solution, which perfectly adequate solution, excellent solution, that the J has just given us. It is a way of ensuring that the same language is in fact being compiled and verified. Well, the rules of programming, I did in fact publish a paper in the Communications of the ACM entitled The Laws of Programming, in which, together with many colleagues from Oxford, I proposed that the semantics of a programming language are given not by a verification proof system, as I proposed in 1967, 68, 69, but rather not by a operational semantics, which had been proposed by Gordon Plotkin and Robin Milner, but by algebraic laws, as proposed by Jan Bergstra in Amsterdam. But now I have found a way of extending these laws by the inclusion of concurrency, and that's what I want to talk about today. The aim of the exercise is to make sure that all the components of a modern software engineering system are observing and following the same semantics, although possibly in various different presentations of the same semantics. So we're talking about not just compilers, but optimizers, program analyzers, program generators, as well as verifiers. I would like to claim that they are all derivable. The specifications of all these systems can be derived from the same algebraic laws. And the laws in question are a selection of laws from these various sources that I've listed on this slide. Well, summary, the laws are fairly familiar. They're associative, commutative, and idempotent laws for the operators of union, intersection, and sequential composition denoted by semicolon. Can you read this slide at the back, Warren? Yes. Thank you. They seem to be rather familiar laws. They're the same laws that appear in many of the systems of the previous slide, and therefore they are widely used. An important concept which I would retain is the refinement ordering, which is very familiar to all of us. It can be defined in terms of a union, as is well known, and on the basis of that definition, one can derive very simply some theorems about ordering, and also a law about the covariance or monotonicity of the operators that are introduced, or all the other operators of the algebraic signature. One can also derive proof rules. And proof rules are, for ordering, perhaps more widely used than the actual axioms. Because a proof rule has the advantage that it is not only mathematically valid, but it also describes a strategy for proving what you want to prove. If you want to prove the consequence of the rule, then the antecedents of the rule tell you a strategy for proving it, like natural deduction, as opposed to the laws of Boolean algebra. So although they're more complicated than the laws of Boolean algebra, natural deduction is a very practical thing to teach and to use. It also, of course, shortens the proofs very considerably. Laws which I shall use this morning, are transitivity, anti-symmetry, and I won't use the third one, the least upper bound property of the union with respect to the ordering. Well, the first operator that I will describe algebraically and show you how to use is sequential composition. And I'm going to describe how sequential composition is axiomatized in the core calculus for program verification. This is the old Hoare, the young Hoare. Sorry. So, yes, the young Hoare in years, but the previous Hoare in the history of my thinking that Jonathan mentioned. In order to prove the correctness of the rule for sequential composition, I need to define the primitive of Hoare logic, the triple in algebraic terms. And the explanation that I give is a very simple one, just a statement that the sequential composition of two operands is, of the precondition and the program is below the postcondition, P semicolon Q below R. Definition seems maybe a little bit too simple, but if you read it the right way, you can see the strong analogy between the triple and the meaning that I've given to it. A precondition describes or summarizes the properties of the program that had just been executed beforehand. The Q is the program itself, which is now going to be started. And if we start it after the program summarized by T, we will get a program that can be correctly summarized by R. Correctly summarized in the, or described or specified by the postcondition R. Correctness being expressed, of course, in the usual way by the refinement ordering. So the sequential composition rule I have written at the top of this slide, maybe familiar to you, can be, I can derive that rule from the law of associativity and the law of monotonicity of semicolon. It's about a two-line proof. I can actually play that, I can give a different proof backwards and prove one half of the associative law from the sequential composition law. But I can't prove the other half of the sequential, for the associativity law. But nevertheless, I think this is a very easily provable correspondence between the algebraic presentation of the operator of sequential composition and its axiomatic treatment in Hoare logic. Miller transitions are often used to describe the way in which a program is actually executed by enumerating the steps of the program one after the other. The definition I give for what we call the Milner triple, RQP, with a line with Q written above the line, is also rather simple. Q semicolon P refines R. Again, I think I should give you an interpretation which explains why this is a realistic definition. The interpretation is that the program R can be executed by first executing Q with P as a continuation which is executed later. Now, of course, there may be other ways of executing R, which are mentioned elsewhere, but this rule describes what happens if Q is the first thing to be done in the execution of R.
We can ignore this, but briefly, yeah. That means you've got 15 minutes.
Well, here's the rule for sequential composition as it would have been if Robin Milner had included this law in his definition of the calculus of communicating systems. It looks remarkably similar to the law for that I gave, very much the same structure as the Moore rule for sequential composition, which of course is not surprising because the definitions were very similar too. Just the order of the composition of Q and P was different. And if you read, well, I won't read it to you. And strangely, well, not altogether strangely, because again, the definitions are so similar that you can actually translate the proof of the Hall logic sequential composition into this notation, and it becomes a proof of the law for Milner logic. And so, not surprisingly, the one direction of the ordering of the associative law is provable from the rule, but it's the other way around from the Hall definition. If we use antisymmetry, the conjunction of the Milner rule and the Hall rule will lead to the exact rule, the complete rule for associativity of sequential composition. And so, what we have discovered is that the algebraic laws are a unification of the operational semantics expressed as in process calculus by Milner triples, and the verification logic as proposed by the earlier Hall, and the conjunction. Both of them can be proved from the algebraic laws, and the composition of them actually allows you to prove the algebraic law from it. So you must believe the algebraic law, mustn't you? If you believe either of them, if you believe both of those are correct descriptions of your programming language. So, let's see what we can do next. Unification of theories. This is the theme of the book that I read with you from, but perhaps based on an algebraic formulation of the semantics, rather than a relational calculus formulation of the language. And the common foundation in algebra gives good evidence for the mutual consistency of program compilers and verifiers. This, of course, in no way detracts from the achievement of the Clink project, the Stack project, in achieving the unification based on the common foundation in the NQ-thumb proof system. Oh, concurrency. Sorry. Let's see whether we can play the same trick for concurrency. We'll add another column to the table of properties. The algebraic properties of concurrency are the same as for sequential composition, but it's also commutative. And we need one additional axiom. I called it the exchange axiom, and I've written it on this slide here. Its message is, if we look at the right-hand side, we see a concurrent composition. The left-hand side is a sequential composition. And the law states that the sequential composition is a refinement of the concurrent composition. The concurrent composition can be implemented by sequential composition in which the execution of the two operands of the concurrent composition are more interleaved than they were on the right-hand side. So that the two red semicolons on the right-hand side are passed simultaneously with each other and can therefore be represented by a single semicolon, the blue semicolon on the left-hand side. Of course, what happens before the blue semicolon on the left-hand side, P of the Q, the same as what happens before the two red semicolons on the right-hand side. And those two still occur in parallel, but there's a synchronization point at the blue semicolon. The exchange law has a number of simpler corollaries, which are called frame laws, because they turn out to be the basis of the frame laws for the separation logic, which is the logic that I'm working towards. And they're very simply, they adapt the exchange law for the case where it can be applied with only two or only three operands. And we can derive the frame laws very simply by just replacing one of the operands by the identity, common identity, the same identity for both sequential and concurrent composition. Now that's a little bit controversial, but if we think of the application, the very important programming command to do nothing is in fact surely the unit of both the other operands. Doing nothing in parallel with something is the same as doing something. Doing nothing before or after something is the same as doing the something, so they have the same unit. If you don't believe it, I'll just postulate it. So here's an example of how that works. I've got two strings on each side of a semicolon. I'm just going to, in the first line of this proof, I've just chosen arbitrarily to draw semicolons at certain places in each of those two strings. Because semicolons are associative, I can do that without changing the meaning. I then apply the exchange law once. The red string gets separated into two parts, a semicolon in the middle, and similarly the black. And then I can choose again where to do the next split by the exchange law in the fourth line of the slide. The fifth line of the slide applies the frame rule to do one more step of interleaving. We're getting more and more semicolons in here, and finally we end up with the final line in which the two strings have become interleaved. So that's what the exchange law is. It's a slightly less familiar sort of algebraic law. It's actually extraordinarily common in mathematics and in real life. It's been rediscovered many times. Sometimes it's called subsumption, sometimes subdistribution. In category theory, it was called the interchange law, and I've forgotten the exact word, so I use an equivalent, a synonym, which is the exchange law. So now I want to prove express the exchange law as a rule rather than as an algebraic inequation. And so I've written a rule here which I can derive from, tells you how to prove the correctness of any conjecture which matches the consequent of the rule, the second line of the rule. All that is necessary is to regroup the operands and split the task into two. The first part proves a correctness of P semicolon P, and the other second part proves the correctness of P dash semicolon Q dash. So I call this the modularity rule because it enables you to split a complex theorem into two parts, which are each of them shorter and simpler. You can see that they're shorter, and they're simpler because they are now proofs of sequential composition rather than proofs of concurrent composition. And I claim that that can be simply proved from the exchange law, and vice versa. These are proofs as equivalents, and if you'll excuse me, I'll just flash the proofs there. These are very detailed proofs, just in algebra. The modularity rule implies the exchange law. The exchange law implies the modularity rule. They're really just extending the definitions and applying the exchange and transitivity and the monotonicity. So, summarizing, the frame rule is derivable of these. The frame rule of separation logic is derivable from the frame corollaries, very, very simply. The major concurrency rule of Milner's CCFs are derivable from the exchange laws, and also the minor rules. And the proof of that is very simple. On the modularity rule line, I've given you a copy of the modularity rule, and above it, I've just simply used the definitions to translate that rule into the notations of Hoare logic and Milner logic. And I've already just shown you the proofs that the exchange axiom and the modularity rule are equivalent, and therefore the treatment of concurrency in separation logic, coherent separation logic, and in Milner's process calculus is identical. They are equivalent to each other. Wonderful unification of theories, I thought. Particularly since Robin Milner was a great friend of mine, because all during the PROCOS project, right up to the time that I discovered this law, I've always thought of myself, and we thought of each other, as scientific rivals. Two great schools of thought, in which a referee from one school would not allow a paper to be published unless it had the right kind of formal semantics given to the language. But we were all saying the same thing, we're just describing it the other way up. The way up, yes, the Q and the P are interchanged. So in fact, Milner logic and Hoare logic are duals of each other. Lovely algebraic concept. Every theorem of one of them can be translated into a theorem of the other. That's a unification. And in the case of the concurrency rules, we have an exact equivalence. Okay, this is a good place to quote from an excellent little book, very polemical, Social Sciences of Sorcery by Stanislav Andrzejewski. He was describing the controversies that occur within the study of social sciences, and claimed at the end that the contours of truth never coincide with the frontiers of embattled parties and cliques. They certainly do not in this case, because our frontier between operational semantics, on which compilers are written, and verification semantics, on which other tools are written, stretches across a wide, flat, and perfectly, wonderfully fertile plain. No hills, no rivers. We are essentially just the same subject being looked at from the left-hand side or the right-hand side. Further laws. I don't think I have time for further laws. So maybe I'll see if I can. Weakest pre-specification, iteration, lovely rules for iteration, reverse, converse, Boolean negation. Anybody against? Well, if you're proposing a revolutionary idea like using algebra in computer science, you wouldn't wish for better antagonists than Isaac Newton and Bertrand Russell, would you? So that we can be quite honest about this. Here is a letter that Isaac Newton wrote to Richard Gregory in 1694, which I have translated into English in the red text here. Our specious algebra is fit enough to find out, but entirely unfit to consign to writing and commit to posterity. Well, it is sometimes difficult to get these things published, but I think Newton would not have approved. Bertrand Russell, the method of postulation has many advantages. They are the same as the advantage of honest toil. Well, I quite agree. But I would claim, as many thieves do, that really they aren't stealing it, they are borrowing it. And that eventually they, or somebody else, in my case it was usually Hertie Fung, would in fact pay it back one day by proving that the postulates are in fact true. And that is the subject of my next talk, which is a description of what do the laws actually mean. Because algebra is absolutely wonderful for reasoning, but it never tells you what it's reasoning about. And that's why our students don't like it. It's why I think Newton didn't like it, because he thought he wanted to reason about the motion of the planets. So he drew little pictures, ellipses and things, following Kepler. And he proved from his laws of motion that the planets must move in ellipses. And that was the verification that he gave that his fundamental laws are in fact correct. They have the intended model. And Bertrand Russell did exactly the same thing for fractions. That quotation was taken at the transition in his introduction of mathematical philosophy when he was moving from natural numbers to fractions. And the possibility of just postulating that the same laws, arithmetic laws, are true, he said, he made that quotation and then said, let's get to work. And then he constructed a model of the fractions in terms of pairs and integers. I claim that my axioms are true for computer programs and their executions. For the executions of computer programs, that if you construct a mathematical model of the execution of a computer program, turns out to look very like a message sequence chart, then the axioms are going to apply to the composition of message sequence charts and also to the composition of sets of message sequence charts, and thereby link the axiomatic treatment of your programming language to the actual executions modeled in the computer. Well, I haven't got time to do that. Thank you very much.
young for logic. You now combine logic formulas and programs.
Yes.
Semicolon. In algebraic logic and dynamic logic, a similar thing is done. Is your doing here now a generalization of dynamic or algebraic logic?
Oh,
Algorithmic logic from 1970.
Probably, yes, yes. It is important that to make distinctions between the algebraic elements that represent states and assertions, but it's not necessary because it's a special case. Every assertion, of course, is a description of the programs which make that assertion true at the end. And if you have a separate class of assertion which you want to distinguish, then that's the way to make the distinction.
Okay, thank you.
You study programs and put them into statements and so forth. My view of programming is always started from another level. Maybe first you have your problem, the specification, which is statements and so forth. And then you derive from there something which hopefully is completely correct by a calculus. I would like to hear your comment on this top-down view, if you like.
Well, I regard the meaning of the variables in my formulae as being descriptions of programs rather than merely texts expressed in a particular programming language. So my elements can be descriptions which are not even computable. I can talk about executions of programs in the way that a computer could not, in fact, execute. And these descriptions can therefore appear on the left-hand side or on the right-hand side of the ordering relation. So the ordering relation applies to specifications just as much as programs. In the model, these things are sets of, shall we say, directed graphs, or yes, sets of directed graphs. So in the same way that regular algebra deals with sequences, this algebra, which is actually coincides with regular algebra, applies to directed graphs rather than sequences.
You unified assertions and programs into a single framework. Normally, one is used to seeing a Boolean algebra structure on assertions, but not on programs. So how do you make the leap?
Boolean structure framework on assertions, but not program. Oh, right. Well, if a program or program description is a set of actions, then you can use intersection, union, and those sets.
I have one remark. You had the exchange law, which is a refinement law. Yeah, there is a lot of work in the literature on communication closed layer transformation, in which case this becomes an inequality where you have some side conditions that the other way also holds, the other refinement also holds, and that is then possible to have a verified sequential program which you may transform into a concurrent one.
Right.
So
Is that it?
it's a remark.
A remark. Yes, thank you. concurrency should appear to be no more mysterious than sequentiality. They are operators that operate as a method of structuring tasks and solutions which are entirely analogous to each other in their algebraic properties and differ somewhat from each other in their execution properties, but they are linked by an exchange law which keeps them, as it were, synchronized.
Okay, do I see any more questions? If not, thank you very much.